What's up, everybody? You're listening to Salah's Corner with the one and only Salah Muhammad. So we are back in the quarantine zone with another episode pulling the thread of what it means to defund the police. And I think this is an incredibly important conversation, one that I want to keep going back to for multiple reasons. The first being, I think it's incredibly important, and I actually believe in the idea of defunding the police. That's number one. Number two, I think in order for us to progress the conversation and find ways that others can lend value, we have to have conversations with people on a wide range of the spectrum, whether they believe and agree with the movement of defund the police or they don't, and they have other ideas on how we address criminal justice system in America. And so on this episode, I'm having a conversation with Shy Williams. We did a previous episode together. She's a former detective. She's currently a speaker and author, and she has her own clothing line, Black Glorification. And because of her background being a detective, I wanted to have her perspective on defunding the police and tackle a larger question of, do we need police to begin with? Here at Salah's Corner, I am always looking to connect with new people, hear new perspectives, and share new stories. And right now, I want to hear from you. Email me at realtalk@salahscorner.com and we can get your story featured on our next episode. First and foremost, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for constantly doing all of this stuff and a lot of the work that you're doing and staying engaged with everything. You know, I saw a meme a few weeks ago and it was like, you know, we're living through those moments in history books that we learned about in school, like right now. And like, yo,
Right.
We really are. And so it takes a lot of effort to kind of continue a lot of these conversations. But before we really dive into it, like how have you been feeling with everything in this moment?
That's a good question, and I'm gonna be honest, like it has taken me back because, I've been actually, I guess you could say, in the trenches. This is one of the reasons why I left law enforcement, just seeing the disparities in how different people were treated based off of the color of their skin. And so, to see that it to fold out and to transpire into the public in the way in which it has, and from the protests to George Floyd to Breonna Taylor, it's a lot to take in. I'm also a scholar, a researcher, and I'm doing my dissertation on implicit bias within policing. So you read it in the history, you know about the history, and then to see that it unfolds the way that it has unfolded contemporary, it kind of goes back to like what we were talking about before. Like, people say how, we're living out what we have read in our history books, so you really, me as a giver, I have to learn how to be a little healthy, selfish to make sure that I'm okay, So I've taken a little break, like not watching TV, news, CNN. My TV is always on CNN right now, so CNN, it's on mute. But I've taken a little break from that, taking a break from just social media, just to make sure that, I'm centered and that I'm okay, because in order for me to be able to give out the information and to be able to be of service, I want to make sure that I'm doing it from an authentic space, a space where I am not coming off of as bitter, and just really wanting to help the people, but I got to make sure that I'm okay first. So that's the process in which I'm in right now. So thank you for asking how I'm doing.
Yeah, I mean, I've learned to start asking that question a little bit more, especially in this moment, but just in general, because, it's a lot going on right now. And I've found that I have moments where I have to take a step away and just like, all right, for instance, this past weekend, I just spent, really not doing anything, engaging much on social media, not writing or trying to create content that engages people in my community and things like that, because I needed a break, really, to just like, you know what, me and a wife, we went out, for a couple of dates the last 2 days and just kind of like spent some time together and just, other than that, sat in front of TV and watched nonsense TV and played around, because like you do need those, like that moment. I like how you said it, the healthy selfish, like you do need that time to yourself to recover so you can really get back into the fight. But now that we are back in it, we're doing this interview, right? We're somewhat trying to get back into the mix of it without that dreaded burnout. Talk to me about like when the term defund the police first, like when you first heard that term, whether it was just with this recent protest or if you've heard it before this moment. What did it mean to you, and then how have you grappled with it?
When I first heard the term, I didn't know what to make of it because when I heard the word defund, the only thing that I can compare it to was Planned Parenthood, right? Because that was, people say, okay, let's defund Planned Parenthood. So my initial thought was like, are they trying to get rid of the police, like in totality? And then once I did a little bit more research, my understanding of what defund police means is reallocating the funds. So this way, it's not where majority of the budget, by a municipality is going directly to the police department. They are taking money from the police department and they are putting it towards education, mental health, after school programs, things of that nature. So I completely can understand that where we're not totally defunding the police, but we're reallocating the funds. Now I understand that, defund does look better on a poster board, right? As opposed to reallocating, because that's a mouthful. Then you gotta come up with a rebuttal, like, okay, well, what do you mean by that? So defund is like, okay, we're gonna get rid of them, but that's not what is going to happen. That's not what's really in the talks, right? As far as the results is concerned. So for me, when I first heard it, like I said, the first thing I thought of was, like Planned Parenthood. But I do think that, reallocating the funds is going to be beneficial because, so much money has been poured into the police departments and it's kind of been, okay, let's throw more money in, right? We're going to increase overtime. We're going to put more police officers on the street, put more police recruits in the police academy. So this way we can have more police officers. But, over the years, you'll see, if you look at the research, that pouring more money into the police departments is not solving the violent crimes. It's not minimizing the crime rate. The crime rate has been steady for years. So you can't say, like, I'm just going to continue to throw money in and that's going to solve the problem. It's I kind of align that with, you can't just say we're going to arrest our way out of it.
Right.
We cannot. That's not the answer. Arresting our way out of it, throwing money is not the answer. I do believe in reallocating the funds because our communities are in need of help. And that help comes in various forms. Mental health. We need to make sure that we have adequate education for our community. So this way that we can grow. And, I look at it as don't just say you want to help and you're going to reallocate the funds and you're just going to, dangle the carrot in front of us or, provide us with the contemporary 40 acres and a mule. Like we want sustainable, valid help that is going to be beneficial, that our people can be able to grow and be able to create a sustainable life for themselves and for the generations to follow. So that's my whole thought on the defunding. Like, don't just say that you're going to do it and do a half job.
Yeah.
Be genuine, right? Truly want to make a change. Don't just speak about it. But let's really put forward something that is beneficial and not like the 40 acres and a mule.
I wrote down all of these like list of topics and questions that I wanted to come to you with. And at the root of it, the point that I want to ask everybody, and I really wish I asked a few other people this, is do we need police? Like, do we actually need police? And, I know in the extremes, people always come with the excuses of like, well, what do we do with all the rapists and murderers and the extremes of society and things like that, right? But like frankly, that's when we know that when we fund communities in the right way, you eliminate a lot of that activity. And so it really begs the question, well, do we need police, especially in the way our society, American society, has imagined it? And I don't have an answer to that question. Like, I keep asking myself that question and I'm not finding adequate answers. And so I'm going to pose that impossible question to you is like, do we need police, especially as we start to have conversations on reshaping society so that it funds the most vulnerable communities so it doesn't continuously pump out victims of crimes that in turn victimizes someone else. Like if we fund society that way and we're having conversations on it, what do we need police as we have it today?
There's two parts to it, right? You have the good and the bad, right? And we know what the bad is. That's why we're here today. That's why we see what we see, protesting, and wanting to end police violence. So you have that part of it, and I think that's the part which I know we're going to talk about, the reform part. So that's one part of it that part we do not need, right? We can definitely do without. As far as the other part of it, the beneficial part, right? I've actually, police and investigated cases and crime. So you do need police, in my strong opinion, based off of my experience. You cannot just get away. You just not demolish it. I don't think that would be beneficial, because there are some good parts of policing that we need as a community. And because you do have some people in this world who are criminals who don't get it, right? And have been to jail time and time again, as far as like rapists. And I know we spoke about this before in the other podcast show where, okay, well, do they just need help? Well, yes, they need help. But then, they also need to understand that there's consequences for their actions, like brutalizing a woman or brutalizing a man and taking advantage of them. And, not just acting from the space of, oh, well, I was sexually assaulted, right? Where you're just, okay, well, I'm just going to touch this person because this is what I was taught. But when I'm talking about when you actually victimize, like truly brutalize a person where it becomes inhuman, like you did what to him, you did what to her, that person is clearly not sane. So I do believe that there are some aspects of policing that we definitely do need, and there's parts of it that we don't need. And I know that the bad part, the excessive use of force, the excessive lethal force, right? The high numbers of lethal force against African Americans in comparison to the population percentage that we make up, to the police violence, that kind of overshadows the good, the beneficial aspects of what policing does. So yes, I find it very hard, or I'm not easily convinced to say that we need to get rid of policing.
It's for me. I get that. I get the extremes of society, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I think the reason why, for me at least, it's so hard to see a society that actually has a benefit to police is because of all of the bad that comes with it, right? And for me, it's seeing that the bad that we currently have far outweighs any benefits to society that it's contributing to, right? Because we see how black communities are much more heavily policed, and in turn have much more of a toxic relationship with police culture than any other community in the country. And so we see black men and black women being brutalized in a different context than the person that was that is out there raping or physically assaulting and brutalizing people. We're seeing that from the people that actually have the power and set up to protect us. And so for me, because I see that as a much more perverse use of the power and use of the system, it's like, how do you I asked Marquise this question: how do you is it enough to say that we'll reform the system to keep the benefits of it, or can you even reform all of that when you have so much embedded racism and the culture and the roots of how policing found its way as slave patrols and things like that? Like, because that's so embedded in the culture of policing, how do you remove that with reforms and still have some benefit that gives to society, other than a complete reimagining of what policing and how we contextualize it today actually looks like?
Yeah, I mean, you're dealing with people, right? You're dealing with people as far as, when you talk about breaking down the establishment of policing, which started with slave patrol. and then how it has migrated to contemporary from stop and frisk. And it's kind of having the same principles, right? The same social control, the same over surveilling, over policing, because that's what slave patrol was, right? You're still managing and social control of the property, the interests of the slave owner. Whereas now, the slave owner has become the wealthy, right? We're protecting like the downtown area, right? Center city. And then you go a few blocks in, you have the inner city, right? The urban. It's like, okay, well, you know your limitations,
Right.
where you can and cannot
Right.
go. So you're dealing with people, and that comes from like stereotypes, learned behavior. And I'm understanding that, when you're dealing with people, they fluctuate, right? Somebody's favorite color could be red one day, and that same day next year it'd be black. People's opinions, they fluctuate. So it's nothing that is very consistent when you're dealing with people. And, that comes in that various forms, right? Learned behavior, when we're talking about trying to change people from what we watch, from what our kids watch, to what we read, to what we view on like the news, just our day-to-day lives. Like, we do have bias, whether it's implicit or explicit, right? We do have these biases. So, I mean, to break it down from that format, as far as policing and, the biases, we're dealing with people at the end of the day. And, that's kind of hard to really make a concrete or have a concrete answer like, okay, well, this can change. Or if we demolish policing, we're going to solve the problem. Because you got to remember that, police respond based off of a call in which they received, right? And so let's talk about the Ahmaud Arbery, right? Now, let's say that the father and the son called the police and said, listen, there's a black man, my neighbors are gone, and he's looking into this property. But I think he's trying to burglarize it, right? So, well, how do you know that he's trying to burglarize it?
Right.
Like, what made you think that, besides the color of his skin?
Right.
And now you see him running away, right? So that's a form of bias. And so when the police respond, they're responding based off of that. So they're incorporating their bias, and they're responding to a black man, tall, dark skin, white shirt, shorts on, and he's running in this area. He's running in this direction, and he just came from this house number on this street, right? So bias comes not just in form of policing, because police officers are human beings as well. So the point of me explaining that story, and from that vantage point, is that biases come not just from police, but from the outside as well, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? So, and that's with limited information. So I don't believe that, by us demolishing the policing, or policing in general, law enforcement, is going to remove what we're dealing with. You have the Amy Cooper, right? You have the Karens, right? This is all forms of bias, just based off of the way in which we look, like a person's color of their skin, their hair, what they're wearing, right? There's all types of forms of bias. And I just don't think that getting rid of policing in its entirety is going to solve our problem, because it's bigger than policing. It is. It really is. It's bigger than policing. Policing is, of course, one aspect of it. And I use that to say, just think about after the Civil War, right? And slave patrol was demolished. During that gap before policing, right, technically police departments were established, who took over, right, for the social control? The KKK, right? The state militia. So it was still it was still a transition. Like, they picked up where they left off. And then it was the police departments that were established. And then, you found some police officers who were attending KKK meetings. And, when they got killed, because it did happen, and they unveiled them, and there were a full uniform underneath of their attire. So, I can't really say that, I'm a researcher, so I can't really sit here and say, as much as I would like to, that, you're seeing more violence towards Black people than you are seeing women getting raped or domestic violence. I worked in an urban city, and I was the primary domestic violence detective and the secondary for sexual assaults. And this is why I am an advocate for reallocating the funding within policing to make sure that we have mental health and that there is some type of funds allocating to build mental health awareness, because there's a lot of domestic violence that goes on within our urban communities at an alarming rate. At an alarming rate. So I being at once in that position of investigating those type of cases to now doing the research on police bias, I cannot say with accuracy or without even conducting a study of this nature to say that one happens more than the other. I cannot. Now,
I
the way in which it's presented to our communities, right, based off of, it's like, watching the news, right, it's scaremonger, right? That's what they're going to push. Like, they want to put out there that Black people are dangerous. These communities are dangerous. You do not want to live in these communities. And they're going to fill the times, right, that slot of time with case after case after case of this shooting happened, this happened in this urban community and this at this intersection. But crime happens in suburban as well. I don't know if I can't remember if I was on your show or not, but I talked about it, where a white woman, I was undercover sitting on surveillance of a white guy who killed his wife a year ago. And the white wife came out, she faked to pick up her fake mail and took a picture of me in my undercover car. And within minutes, I guess all of the stay-at-home wives came, and then her husband came, speeding around the block and almost hit my car and just demanded to know why I was where I was at. And he called the state police. So he called the police, and the state police arrived. And I didn't leave because I'm a cop, but I can't tell him that I'm undercover. And, the trooper, he's like, oh, they want you to move from your house. I'm like, listen, I'm a cop, and down the street, we're about to apprehend this guy who killed his wife. I said, it's funny, Troop, that, they're worried about, me, a Black woman. They don't even know that I'm a cop. But, literally 3 doors down, somebody brutally killed his wife.
right.
But you're worried about me. So yeah, I hope I answered your question in a nutshell.
I agree. There's a massive amount of domestic violence in Black communities. And there's a lot of bias that goes into the system from the outside, right? But when you talk about funding, through mental health, through education and schools, through healthcare, right? You talk about funding the entry points of, the interactions with police and the criminal justice system. But you start to eliminate the need for the police in the way we imagine it today. I don't necessarily say that the police is doing more harm to us than anyone else or anything like that, but more so that the perversion of the power makes it so that we should drastically reimagine what that looks like. But then also, if we're talking about funding resources and funding communities in a way that also doesn't need and require that police intervention, can we then still have conversations on why do we need police, right? Because the idea is on one hand, the police is a huge perversion of power and racism and corruption on levels that systemically harm Black people. But then on the other hand, we're talking about funding and resourcing communities in a way where they don't need that. So through both avenues, it's this through line keeps coming out. But do we talk about, like, the point of police is, right, is we want to address and solve crime, put people through the system, rehabilitate them so it doesn't happen again, right? Well, at some point, we should start to see a reduction in all of those metrics through measures of police intervention. And if we are not seeing that, that's a problem, and that requires some reimagining of how we do policing. But then if we are seeing that, and if we are seeing those reductions in those numbers, should we still be having those conversations on reducing police? And it's like, I don't see how we don't have that conversation.
I think it's going to be a beta test, right? Because we want it to work, right? But, when it's a beta test, like we sit here, we put everything together, right? We're going to reallocate these funds, and we are praying and hoping that this is the outcome. But if this is not the outcome, we don't get the results in which we want, what do we do? So, I really truly believe that it's going to be a beta test. No one knows what it's going to look like or what's going to be the outcome. And heck, come on, we know our people. Are they going to be open to it?
Right.
right? We're talking about change. Like, shoot, our police department, police agencies, higher ups, chiefs, mayors, are they really going to be open to it? You know, I said it before, like, you know, genuinely want to change. Don't just speak about it, right? The 40 acres and a mule, right? That
Mm-hmm.
was, they didn't really want change. They wanted to, okay, well, listen, look, dangle a carrot. We're giving them 40 acres and a mule. Mule cannot reproduce in the way in which, you know, the other animals can. So, right. So do you truly want it to change, and can it work? Is it sustainable? Is it really going to be a drastic change that our culture, our people can really be able to benefit from this, like from generations and generations, like other cultures. So I think as we roll this carpet out to see if it works. I think if we see the numbers work, I think we're going to end up having to have that conversation, right? Because if we can't pay both,
Right.
right?
I love your videos that you do on Instagram. That you really you do a number of different types of videos where you either break down our interactions, specifically Black people, youth, their interactions with policing, being pulled over, and I saw you did a video about like having people understand that yes, you can also get pulled over in your driveway and things like that, especially if it's a violation that occurs before you got there. But then you also do a lot of videos on talking about like how the status of police, or like talking about like how we view the role of police in our society. And I guess my question to you is really like, should we, you have a brand called Black Glorification, and I think about that in the way of how we glorify police, right? And how we talk about the role of police as the savior. And that has, in my opinion, has allowed us to view the police as can do no wrong. Is there a time, like, should we start to reimagine like the role police actually have, and like how we glorify them in that sense, that yeah, there's some good cops, and yes, there are some benefits to the how American policing is, but in the large scheme of things, when we talk about reallocating funds and defunding the police and all of that, should we have a real consensus of how we glorify policing in our culture, like how many police movies come out every year, and the number of cop shows on TV, like they just canceled a bunch of them just recently. Like, should there be a reevaluation of how we love and adore police culture in our TVs, our movies, our TV shows, and all of that?
That's First of all, that's a great question, and I would say I'll answer by saying this: yes, I think we do need to re-examine it, because I think policing does not align up. Okay, the practices of policing, the practices and methods of policing does not align with what it says on paper. And what do I mean by that? Right? We have the police violence, we have the racial profiling, and on paper we stand for integrity. We stand for protecting and serve. So where does that protecting and serve and that integrity, is that subjective, based off of community? So for me, like, that's where I've been at, the more that I read, the more I do research on, I've been kind of going down that path of questioning, of being intrigued and inquisitive about, we don't really align to what we say that we are, right? And I'm saying we because, I used to be. So we don't really align to what, we say that we are on paper. If you were to sit here and just read a few mission statements of police departments, right, you probably scratch your head and say, what? Like,
Yeah, I don't do that.
Right? You have this percentage of disparities,
Yeah.
within your police stops, right? So the integrity part would be, because the numbers, because it's all about algorithms. And police departments, police chiefs, police higher ups, they have these CompStat meetings, right? And they go over the percentage. That's how they create what is known as hotspots. And a hotspot is pretty much an area in which this is an area that is prone or known to have had this much crime in this amount of time. Over the past week, let's say, they have had 7 shootings in this 3-block radius. And I want a cop on each intersection, right? Police presence to let them know that we're not going to have it anymore, right? So it's not, it's more, policing is more reactive than proactive. I used to always say that as a detective. I'm like, okay, well, if they shot up at Broadway and 6th Street, that's not even an intersection, but let's just say Broadway and 6th Street, and now we're going to show up and have police presence, you don't think they're going to move to another intersection?
Right, right.
I always thought that was dumb. But as far as, back to your question, I do think that we do, America does glorify it, right? Because they want to be, protect and serve, right? They want to be like the community policing, right? And you'll have there's only certain cops or certain officers that can be in the community policing unit, right? It's not the detective, it's not the undercover detective, the undercover narcotics detective that's in the community policing unit. So to me, I really chalk it up to a dog and pony show. Right, you want to be able to present yourself as, giving out ice cream and having coffee with the community or putting together a block party. But then, you have another unit that's out there, rolling the corners, right? Doing the stop and frisk, even though it's unconstitutional. It's all about how you write the report, right? And we know just how reports are misconstrued. Just look at the Breonna Taylor. Right? She said she had no injuries. And the sister,
but she's dead.
Was killed.
Right.
Right. So yes, I do think that we glorify it, and I don't understand. I don't know what the obsession is with policing within America. It definitely has grown over the years from, I guess, I don't even know, from my time that I know it, and I know it was probably prior to that, but the whole cops, what you gonna do, like that whole, that whole theme song, to it growing to, I don't even know what they have now, but I know they have I don't know, it's like a art talk where they'll be like, okay, we're going to Texas, the border of Texas and Mexico, and then they'll come back, they'll talk about it. I don't even know what that show is called. Or they have the First 48, which that is my show. That makes me think, back to when I was a detective and doing interrogation. But they have all of these shows that, they have, America has become obsessed with it. And I don't really, honestly, I can't think of what the obsession has come to, but it does not align to how they present themselves on paper as far as their mission statement and who they want to be, right? They want to be the police department that's actually out there making a difference and, doing the ice cream with the cop and, buying and giving out burgers. And we're, taking our police hat and putting it on the kid and taking a picture. That's the dog and pony show.
Yeah. It's I don't know. You actually just gave me something I think I might want to write about a little more in detail. Just thinking about it a little more deeply, because it really is a dog and pony show, and it really does have an American obsession with, policing. I mean, I can think over the last 10 years, easily 20 cop shows, not even to mention movies where we just glorify police culture and things like that, and being the bad cop is a good thing, and all of this kind of stuff.
And I tell you, the real people who go to the police academy and become officers, whether it's full time or part time, it's nothing like the TV, nothing at all. Your heart is racing when you get in a foot pursuit and you're by yourself. And, you're on the radio and you're calling out the streets as you're passing them. And you're just praying that you have the right street, because in the hood, right, they turn the street signs.
Yep.
Especially, you have a new police department after they demolish and you put new police on the street, and they're not familiar with the area because they didn't grow up there. And they're like, oh, well, I'm at this intersection, but not realizing that the street signs have actually been turned. But it's not, the real world is not, the real policing is not like, the movies. It's not at all. And it's just nothing like it. It give you heart palpitations, police, they say in academy, they teach you this. I'm going to try to remember all of them. But there's 3 there's three health concerns that police officers have: heart attacks. I think it's called gastro something, but it's like the G something, like pretty much with your intestines and how
Gastrointestinal.
yeah. So it's all based off of stress,
Hmm.
and I can't remember what the other one is. And police. They after the job they're dealing with a lot, and so they're involved in a lot of domestic disputes, and they drink a lot, right? And they form up addiction. So it's nothing like the movies and the shows that how they depict it at all. So it's just an obsession.
Shy Williams, thank you. This was. I think I'm gonna still have to keep asking. Somebody's gonna have to convince me on why we need police, because I keep having, and I'm not saying that we don't necessarily. Honestly, I think I am. I think I am saying that we don't need them. I'm finding especially how we imagine it in American culture today, but I'm still gonna be looking for somebody to follow that thought thread with me on the different avenues when you actually explored them. Does that mean drastically reshaping at least how we view policing in American culture? Can you plug all your content for everybody? And go ahead. You look like you were gonna say something else too.
I will. I was. I mean, I really want to see how things play out because I truly believe that I remember my days as a patrol officer, and responding and de-escalating a situation just based off of interpersonal skills, right? And relatability, honestly, and representation. So all of those things: relatability, representation, interpersonal skills, knowing how to talk to someone to de-escalate a situation when two people who love each other, have feelings for each other, are literally going at it. And they call police when it's like, okay, someone needs to be removed or someone needs help. And just, listen, like, bruh, just go for a walk. Go for a walk. I don't want to arrest you, and I don't want to get called back here tonight. But go for a walk. Maybe go stay at a friend's house. Allow everything to just blow over, and then come back. Maybe you guys are just mad at the moment, but you'll come back together. But just being able to de-escalate that and not have to go hands on, because who wants to go hands on? You just got your uniform out the cleaners. You got to wear for you got 2 more days within your week. Before you get your long weekend. Right, that was at least my outlook on it. Like, come on, I don't want to have to go hands on. Like, I'm too cute. I don't want to break a nail. Now I gotta go to nail salon. I'm working 12-hour shift. So honestly, I really want to see how everything plays out. I do think that these services can be beneficial if it is done correctly and done with dignity and genuine. Like, it really has to come from someone's genuine heart to really want to be able to see change. If it comes from that space, then I think that we can move mountains, and I think that it can be beneficial. And I think seeing how that plays out, I think will change my position on it. Because honestly, when police officers respond to calls, a good percentage of them, majority of them, are not violent calls. Right? They're, they just wanted the person to leave, or they're not violent calls. I'll just leave it at that. And the majority of them, they are not. So a lot of it, you're dealing with like social issues, mental health issues. So I do think that it could be beneficial. Again, it just has to come from a genuine space of really wanting to seek change. So that's my position. I may join you on that. It all depends on how it comes out. So I do believe that, as a community, as a culture, we do need, we're dealing with trauma. We're dealing with so much trauma. I said this, years ago, that it's so difficult being Black in America.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's so stressful. It's so exhausting. It's like, as a Black person, I know for me, I'm just waiting to excel. Like, literally, like I really am. It's one thing after another. And, I'm just waiting to excel. So I don't know. I may join you in that position. I don't know. We'll see how this plays out.
We'll see. I might be able to talk you around to it. Shy Williams, where can we find all your content?
Yes, you can find me at I am Shy Williams on Twitter, on Instagram, and you can follow my clothing line, Black Glorification, where we glorify being Black, at Black Glorification on Instagram. And you can visit us on our website, www.blackglorification.com.
Shy, thank you. I appreciate this. This was dope. Thanks for coming back.
Thank you for having me. It's always been a pleasure.
Again, another big thanks to Shai for joining me on this conversation and having this debate on, do we need police? I'm still not convinced that we need police, especially if we are talking about funding communities appropriately, particularly Black communities appropriately, so they aren't forced into interactions with police, so that they aren't having interactions where police are agitators into their space, and so they can actually thrive, not just, through limited interactions with police, but access to schools and healthcare and mental health resources and community centers and arts programs. All of these things that other communities have, Black people need it too. And if we are expected to thrive in those communities, we should be expected to not be threatened by police with the use of force. Thank you again. I encourage you all to give me your feedback on this issue. You tell me why we need police in our communities, especially if we are funding them appropriately. Email me all your questions at realtalk@salascorner.com. And until next time, peace, y'all.